Good evening, and welcome to the Caring View, the online health and social care platform free to access to absolutely everybody. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that follow button. If you're watching on YouTube, do a subscribe. There's a bell you can tick. We are live tonight on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X. Not on Insta, which we usually are, but don't know why. But we are on Twitch. So if you're a gamer and you do Twitch, we are on Twitch. I don't know what Twitch is, but we are on it and we are live. Everything we do is absolutely free. You can access all of our free resources, our podcast episodes and our chat show episodes at www.thecaringview.co.uk. Head over to there to see our supplier lists as well and all about our sponsors. Our sponsors are our heavenly sent angels. They are the ones that allow us to continue doing the Caring View for free to absolutely everybody. It allows us to keep the lights on, keep our software running, and also allows us to go around the country doing the events that we do. We've got one coming up in 2 weeks' time, I think, Mark, at West Sussex in Partnerships in Care. WSPIC, I call it, WSPIC. But we are there providing a CQC session for all of the managers, part of that care association. So the sponsors' money allows us to be able to go out and do that. So, without further ado, a bit of a roll call just so you get to know who our sponsors are. We have Prosperwell. If you know Toby, Smooth Toby, Tea with Toby, used to be Smooth Digital, go over to Prosperwell for all of your marketing needs. They are the UK's leading digital marketing agency. We have CBAT, Care Business Associates Training. Paul joined us on the show a couple of weeks ago. Huge friend of the Caring View, so please do go check them out. And I always say this, but go check out their CHAPS training. They do CHAPS training, but they also do Train the Trainer training, which I've discovered as well. So go and check that out as well. Not badly priced, in person and digital. So, you know, we'll be talking about customer relations tonight. The in-person aspect, huge. So go and check them out. We have Attis Care by Attis Insurance Brokers. I don't need to tell you what this is, but we all need it. So go check those guys out. Log My Care. If you are new to the world of digital social care records, do go check them out. Mark assures me there is still a freemium version of their software. Great introduction to digital social care planning, and probably long term, once you're on it, you're probably going to stick with them. And last but not least, we have Florence, directly connecting healthcare professionals with shifts and training all around the country. Mark, I'm going to have to start pre-recording that and doing that at the beginning of each week because it's getting longer and longer.
I'll try and find somewhere else to stream to next week, just so you can add something else to the intro. But
I'm not on TikTok or anything. Like, can you stream to TikTok? I don't know whether you can.
No, I can't stream to TikTok, sadly. It's now streaming to Instagram, so that is working now.
Oh, on Instagram as well, everybody. We will find more in which we can stream. Maybe we will join TikTok at one part, and we'll do that thing where we just sit looking at the camera all night, flicking through the comments, you know, and it's like, ooh.
Send us a universe. Send us a universe.
Send us a universe. I don't know what any of that means. Mark, good evening. How are you?
Yes, not too bad, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. I am good. I went to the gym today. I feel dead proud of myself. I went back to the gym for the first time in ages. But no, I'm good. I'm excited. It's our last show now before the care show. So if you have not registered for the care show, please do. We will get the website link up. There we go, as if by magic on the screen. Tickets are free if you work in health and social care. Really, really great event. We have got a couple of talks. We are on the keynote stage on day one discussing regulation, and that is going to be a really interesting talk. We had our pre-meet on that earlier on this week. Real shame that the Penny Dash report hasn't been published yet, because I was hoping to go a bit ham into that. But we can do a special on that at some point, so that's not a huge issue. And then we've got environmental sustainability, so please do go register for the care show. We also have the care manager show coming up in November, which again we will get the links for and we will share with you. Care manager show, is it still the same format, Mark, where they repeat day one and day two?
I believe so, yes.
So do go check them out. I won't be there. I'm in Berlin at the Christmas markets. I will miss it. But I want to go eat currywurst and, you know, drink alcohol-free mead and stuff like that. So I'm quite looking forward to my Berlin trip. There we go, caremanagementshow.co.uk. Go and subscribe to that. Again, that is free, isn't it, Mark, to everyone?
It is, yes. And this year we'll be in London. So if Birmingham's too far for you and you're down south way, then London might be a better fit.
Did they have a celebrity?
It's a great show.
Last time we were there, they had Boys Zone or West Boys or Boys Life.
Boys Life, Adam. Boys Life. Get it right.
Have they got anyone this time?
That is a good question. I do not know.
We'll find out and we'll let you know.
We went.
Right, tonight we are discussing. I'm gonna have to wet my lips to try and get my tongue around this title. Mastering supplier relationships for strategic advantages. And who better to be joining us tonight but Rian Bulmer, head of partnerships, is it, at Radar Healthcare. Good evening, Rian. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Adam and Mark.
Oh, I'm dead excited. I mean, for those who don't know, Rian and I are working together in the professional capacity, or as much as professional and I can go in the same sentence. But we do like day job stuff together as well, which is, it's dead exciting to have you here because I am an avid Radar user. I will wax lyrically about Radar all day long, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I think it's a fantastic system. And this is, we're not sponsored by Radar yet. We're not sponsored by Radar.
You need to get on that roll call.
But I honestly, I fully endorse the system you guys have because it helps me so much on my day-to-day. And I know once we've gone through the whole embedding process, because it's not a short process, that it's going to repay us in dividends in absolutely everything. With the statistics, it's going to give us the analytics, even just the data capture and the streamlining of the stuff we do. And I suppose this is part of the success of how you guys do it at Radar with building your relationships. So I'm just going to start with a very simple question. And how important are supplier relationships, Rian?
Well, it's funny because we call my role looking after partnerships in different tech companies can mean just the relationship with other tech providers. But actually at Radar, we don't have a customer function. We've got a partner function because every customer is a partner. And I think just that real small semantic piece shows how important it is to Radar as the kind of cornerstone of everything we do. I've been at Radar coming up to 2 years now, and there were two clear reasons that I joined Radar. One was the product, because the power of the product and the scope and the ability the product has to shape health and social care is phenomenal. But secondly, the values of the organisation were so customer-centric and people-centric, the people who work there too, as well as the customers, that to have those two things, everything else is easily resolvable if those two things are right. And so whilst there's things we need to learn, there's ways we need to work with our customers, the appetite and the want to learn is there and is throughout the whole of Radar. And I think organisations that don't have that really need to think about that, because if you're not keeping your customers happy, then you kind of don't have a business, no matter how whizzy your product is or whatever that might be.
No, absolutely. And I think we now live in an age, definitely in social care, where there are so many different suppliers out there that actually it is very easy to go from one supplier, mobilize into another, especially if you're kind of a smaller company and you've got to go through that kind of procurement process. So I think relationships are absolutely key.
Mark, I promise I'm coming over to you. I promise I'm handing over because I do a lot of talking, and this is part and parcel of coming on the show. I just interrupt all the times. But you and I have this discussion quite a lot, don't we, Mark? When we walk around the care show, and I know we've just said to everyone, come to the care show, come to the care management show, you are bombarded by all of this software, all of this tech, all of these products. And sometimes it kind of just feels like, and I'm not saying this is of anyone that we know or anyone that we've worked with in the past, but a lot of it nowadays is just a case of, oh, well, social care is just really, really struggling. So we'll just create a product and give it to them and then everything will work and everything will be fine. And we see so many of these that don't work and don't fail. I've used some of them and have been terrible and they've not benefited us whatsoever. And that relationship's not been there, but we've been hoodwinked by this shiny, sparkly package of, we will make all of your problems go away. And it just doesn't work like that, does it?
I think it's been even worse since COVID from what I've seen in the markets, because everyone thinks they are really certain they've got an idea that can fix your problems, but without knowing the detail of your problems, no one can do that except you guys. And so the tech has always got to be secondary. It's got to be supporting, and it's a tool that's got to be built to suit what's needed operationally. So I would always be nervous for anyone that can say this can fix your problem, because you don't know that. You hope it might, and you think you've found a niche, and you need tech and you need innovators, and you've got to keep pushing forward. But I'm been in health tech for a long time now, 27 years. And over that 27 years, some of the technology I've seen was there 27 years ago, working, proving concept, the ability to share data between systems, elements of AI or algorithms, all of those things have long existed, but so it's not about finding cool tech, it's about finding ways to be able to implement it properly and implement it in a way that best suits operational needs and doesn't just give you another log on to another system that you'd forget.
No, definitely. So tonight I want to kind of break down the show into kind of 3-4 bits. Either Adam's got some smoke on his screen or the ghost just walked past. So I thought we could talk around kind of pre-sale, and then that procurement stage, and then into mobilization, and then kind of the ongoing relationship that providers can build with their supplier. So I guess we've just spoken there about there's loads of different systems out there. There's loads of on-the-shelf systems. How can organizations kind of best evaluate suppliers before they even start going through the procurement process, that kind of research stage? What would be your kind of advice around that area?
I think the whole industry could benefit from being able to define problem statements as opposed to solutions that people think that they need, because quite often you can see that pre-procurement things have been influenced even by suppliers, because you can see that and kind of feel like, oh, it needs these 20 different features that this supplier's got, and that's just the industry. But to shift that thinking to go, actually, what is the problem I'm asking? And let me just put this call to action out to the market to say, can you help me fix this problem? Is going to kind of open up more opportunity, more innovation. It's going to get suppliers really thinking about what they're delivering. But ultimately, it is going to fix your problem, because I think sometimes people get railroaded down this list of stuff and requirements in a procurement checklist. Must integrate here, must do this, that's made up of all these different elements of bits of information from across the business, but it's not stopping to think, actually, what is it I'm trying to fix here? So if I took a scenario of stuff that we might buy in Radar, it might be a CRM. And so rather than saying, I want a CRM that does this and links here and has got a field where I can put my customer's name and a field that does this and so on and so forth, I should be able to go to the market and say, I'd just really like a system that meant I knew exactly what was going on with my customer at any moment in time, and I could pull that data out across the whole of the business. And, just giving that problem statement shifts it somehow. But that means that people have to really kind of push against standard process and procedures, which, I mean, you guys, I don't know, you guys will be involved in more procurement processes from your side, but you must get stuff that's like, tell me the 10 things you want from this system and we're going to put something out to market, or, rushed kind of pulled together procurements.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I think it's about doing the research. And I think I'm lucky I work for a large organization as kind of a separate procurement team, so they manage all of that. But I think the thing that worries me, and I know we've spoken about it on the show and kind of at the trade shows, is the number of managers that will reach out maybe on a WhatsApp group or a forum and say, I'm looking for this, what does everybody recommend? And then they get a whole list of products and suppliers that they could use. But I don't know how many of them would then go and have the time to research each one of them. And I think they kind of take gospel that what works for one organization might really work for others. And I'm the first to say, actually, I wouldn't recommend X, but actually go and try that, because it might really work for your service. It doesn't work for what we need, but it could do for you. But equally, we might have a system that we think is amazing, meets all of our needs, but might not meet the needs for maybe a smaller organization. So there's definitely something in that research element of scoping that I definitely recommend people do. Adam, what about you? Because you don't have a separate procurement, do you? You would obviously manage that yourself.
Yeah, and for me, it's the biggest issue with procurement, especially around new systems and software, is the time. Because it takes a long time to go through it, find out what you want, scope all your different types, put together a consultation with your team first. What is it that we need something to because there's no point just putting something in place if it's not going to actually fix a problem. Is there a problem there to start with? And is there anything we can do at the moment before going out and spending loads more money on a new system or a new software? And then it's, well, you want to see at least 3. Because you don't want to just go for the first one that you see. And then it's also weeding out the liars. And I mean that in the most genuine way possible. But there are people out there who'll go, oh, yeah, it totally does this. Oh, of course we can. Oh, yeah, not a problem. Absolutely fab. And then you're starting like, well, actually, it's about 2 years down the line, but it will be coming. It's what we are going to be doing. And it's like, well, no, I told you what I needed now. What I needed now was this, and you can't provide me that, and now I'm locked into a contract. So it's around having that confidence to be able to say, this is what I need, and this is what I need now. And if you can't do it, just be honest with me. If you think my expectations are too high, tell me. But this is the problem I have. This is the solution that I need. And if you can't do that, you're not for me. Don't just try and tell me you can to get the sale. I need you to be honest with me, because if I was a supplier, I would rather knock back 5 sales and only take 1 that I know is going to be a genuinely good sale than take all 6 and piss off 5 of them. Because they're going to go away and go, oh, well, don't go with them because they sold us the world and actually they can't do anything for us. You've then got 5 people going out there. If each of them tell 2 people each, that's 10. If each of them go tell 2 people each, I don't know, my math is rubbish. But it just grows that bad word of mouth. So for me, it's just about asking them to be honest. And Rianne, you'll know from working with me, all I want is honesty, and we work, and that's why we work so well together at Radar in my company, because I'm just like, can he do it? If not, that's fine. I'm going to go try and do it myself and see what I can do, and share that learning back. And it's all about that honesty and having that open, transparent relationship. If you can't get that from a supplier and you feel like they're being cagey, I would just say knock it on the head. But as a provider, especially for a lot of people who listen to us, a lot of people who tune in, week out, they are small providers without the larger teams, without, say, multiple directors or board members and all of that. And they are the ones making these decisions. And sometimes as a manager, you can just get catfished, basically, by a software provider. Mark, oh my gosh, let's do a special. Let's do a catfish special.
Yes.
Let's get some feedback. If you're watching this show right now and you've been catfished by a supplier, let us know, and we are going to do a catfish special. Like our own little panorama.
I think there's something about even having tools that let you run mini procurement processes if you haven't got a procurement team. So we can provide these as suppliers, but they're always biased. You kind of can only do it in a biased way, but it's at least a starting point that gives you that kind of checklist of the 3 systems and the things you should think about, and not just product wise, but the ancillary services and the support and everything goes around that, and how you're going to interact with the business. But also how a key thing is to think about how things are going to impact different stakeholders, because what we see time and time again is the person who buys it and the person who uses it are always different. And so sometimes that gets lost in translation, and the needs from the person who's buying often is different to the needs from the person who's going to use it, and both are valid. But being able to document that and understand that and make sure that those rules of engagement are really clear up front, because I think, again, that's where kind of stuff gets lost in translation and you get all that noise, and probably are more open to be able to be catfished, because, you know, you can kind of get that, oh, well, so-and-so wanted this and they said they wanted that. We did a mapping exercise a while back, and was just as a guess how many different stakeholders are involved in a Radar system. And I don't mean as in, you know, it touches everyone in the business, but really day to day involved in the system. Guess?
15.
I must have told you this. I must have told you.
Am I right?
Yes.
Oh, no way! Yeah, you haven't told me this.
I must have the same pattern all the time, yeah. 15. But that shows those 15 different views, each with a slightly nuanced need from the system. And to be able to understand all that as part of procurement is really super important to get right from the start. As I'm still excited that he's got 15 right.
He can't say he never wins anything anymore, can he?
If that is all I win in my life, I'm going to be very disappointed. But I'm just with myself. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I should start like predicting football scores. I don't even know anything about football. I might do that. In fact, I hope the Care Show has one of them jars where you've got to try and guess how many sweets are in it, because maybe I can do it. I've got like a gift that I didn't know about.
I've got a gift from a supplier 2 years ago, Adam. You'll know because I won it with them. I've still never received that gift. I'm going to go.
You never got your loo roll?
Never got my unlimited amount of loo roll, or however much it was. No, it never came.
For the last 2 years, Mark has not had good toilet hygiene because he never got this toilet roll.
I know.
It's been terrible.
Well, I mean, I don't know where to unpick that one.
Oh.
It's the starter.
I'm just going to try and keep us back on track. In the background, I am trying to look because we have got someone who's been on the show previously. And forgive me if you're watching and I don't remember. I'm really, really sorry. I thought it was called Health Tech Guide, and I might be completely wrong, but there is a guide out there which helps compare the market basically.
It's the Care Tech Guide.
Care Tech Guide. And that does, do some of that comparison for you as well. And it pulls up all these different companies, all these different softwares and techs that are out there. And it's a really good starting point if you don't have that procurement process in place, because it's a bit like a witch for social care. We couldn't have a conversation on the Care Review without bringing something in around values. And we all know that shared vision and culture is a huge part of the well-led domain now under the CQC framework. But I think very few of us really consider the values of the organizations and the ethics of the organizations that we purchase from. And actually, do they align with us? So as a provider, how should we or how could we assess the values of the companies that we're sort of, is it procuring? Is that the word? Yeah. What would be the best way for us to be able to go around that?
There's a few different ways and different sets of questions you can think of, and none of which give you a definitive answer, but they start to point and help shape your opinion. So I would start with, how is the company funded? How are they backed? Who are the main shareholders? All that kind of technical stuff, because that starts to give you a view. And then I know it's every company is going to come up with a cheesy origin story, but I would always ask what the origin story is, because it's really important. And when you do it, you'll find a couple of things. One, you'll get a really genuine story, and it might be actually quite boring, but like they're usually the ones that are the most genuine, like, oh, well, our origin story is quite dull. Sorry, Paul Lee, if you're listening, but it's just that they were doing consulting and they found that they needed a piece of software and they fixed a problem, and Radar iterated and grew by fixing problems. That's not like super exciting. That's not being on a beach in Bali and having this brainwave idea. But so the more realistic the origin story, is something worth interrogating. But also, some people don't have an origin story, and that's even more concerning, because you kind of have to have that, and you have to have a company linking to it and being driven by it to get the values going throughout the company. So I think that's always super important, and also can be quite entertaining, I suppose, from that point of view. But the other things I would do is start to do some kind of softer research around the business as a whole. Glassdoor reviews, what are employees saying, how happy they are. That is probably one of the biggest insights into an organization. You go and you get a view, and it's just never wrong. It's just like, the volume of employees. And you can also watch though for Glassdoor, because sometimes you can see where, so I'm not naming companies, by the way. It's just kind of, you can see where one central person's gone in and tried to bump and get the top 10 reviews up at the top. And, but just look at all these different tools available. Like, what can you find out about the business? And
I would also, just on, before you move on to your next point, check the dates on the Glassdoor reviews. Does Glassdoor give you dates on the reviews?
Yeah.
Because if they've all done in the same week.
Yeah, exactly. But I would also start to look at, I would ask the organisation if you can see their latest customer feedback stats, their NPS stats, and I'll come on to NPS and why that's so important later on. But I'd ask for this information, because we would give that willingly. Anyone who said, and what we would also do is if there was anything negative, we would tell you what we were doing to address it, because I think it takes bravery on both sides of a supplier provider relationship to go, yeah, okay, they're the stuff we're working on. We're not perfect. Everyone knows nothing's perfect. But so you've kind of got to be prepared as a supplier to talk about that, but be prepared as a kind of potential purchaser to listen and be accepting of that, and kind of just make your judgment on the trade-offs.
No, absolutely. And when it comes to kind of the procurement scoring element, so we know that years ago it had been cost over quality, and now sometimes it's 50-50, and then you've got kind of customer services chucked in, and then obviously, like Adam mentioned with the CQC, you've now got sustainability and checking that your supplier is green.
Yeah.
Where should organizations pitch their scoring? Should it still be on quality and cost? Should they have a 10% factor for kind of the green sustainability? What would be your recommendation kind of there? Because obviously it's going to vary organization to organization and depending on what's in your own procurement policy. But just to kind of support some of those smaller organisations that might not have a procurement team?
Yeah, so there's interesting things. I can see someone's put in the comments about, policies that different organisations might have. I know the G-Cloud framework is less used in care, more used in across the kind of hospital side, NHS side of the business. But when you look on the G-Cloud framework, there are a decent list of due diligence they've done. So to get on that framework, you pre-complete your kind of due diligence as a provider. And it's all on there. So you can look Radar up there and you can see we're under Smart Gate Solutions on there, but you can see our entries. And that gives you a broad enough view of the kind of elements that are kind of best practice from a government level to look at for a procurement. I'm sorry, anyone from procurement on this call while I bodge my way through 101 procurement. It's like, just look on a website and get a list, it'll be fine. But to get that list, it shows those elements. I think there's something, I think it's really super important to have sustainability on there and to talk about that. I think most tech providers will try their hardest to be as sustainable as possible. And I sometimes wonder if it's just a bit of a kind of the quality of the product and the outputs and the productivity that's going to be delivered and be the things that I think would be the burning questions for me if I was buying, and that ROI and the real use cases. Not to say that sustainability isn't important, but it's kind of almost a given if it's a tech provider.
No, that's really good insight. And I didn't even think about, and that would come from kind of your needs analysis of the business in terms of ROI and what you actually like the output of the system that you're using. I do worry that, and I've seen more and more since the single assessment framework, and I think as we nearer the CQC starting to kind of inspect on sustainability, more and more people say actually you need to make sure that whatever it is, whether you're looking for PPE, whether you're looking for something digital, you need to be checking their sustainability. People moving around because maybe the organisation that they're currently buying from doesn't have anything and they're moving to one that does. Adam, kind of you've just gone through the CQC inspection framework. Anything on sustainability and procurement and suppliers from your inspection? Oh, you're on mute.
Nothing around sustainability. Nothing really around procurement. I mean, I've started. Do you know when you've got so much to do, and this is how it feels, and I'm not even a registered manager, so I feel so much for registered managers because I'm a quality manager, and my day, if I wanted to, I could work midnight till noon and then noon till midnight every single day, every single week of this year and still not be done with everything that I want to be able to do. It's not all like, oh my God, all this stuff we've got to do to be actually good. It's actually stuff that I want to do to just do better and to do more of. But I have started going through all of our providers, all of our software providers, and getting all of the sort of policies, their contingencies, building up my BCPs around them, what their sort of thing around environmental sustainability is. I did it around the Brexit impact, pandemic impact. If there's another pandemic, how's that going to affect your service? How will that affect us, etc., etc., etc.? Because then that's actually, yes, James, we are cool. We've got a little club going. Because then all of that allows us to then plan for the future and plan for all these risks and do all this wonderful work. And actually, no one asks about it. But it's great work to have, and it's great to have there. But from my recollection, they never asked us around procurement, never asked us around the software companies we use. They just wanted to see that we were using them effectively and the care we were doing was great. And then obviously nothing around environmental sustainability because that's been pushed back till next year that they're going to start looking on that. So yeah, no, that was a really long way of saying no.
No, that's okay. And I find that surprising because there's so much emphasis on the procurement within their framework and under different sections. But yeah, so to not, because obviously you were monitored on all of them, to not come up once is surprising.
I would say though, to anyone out there watching this who hasn't gone through it, that does not mean don't get the privacy policies from the software companies that you use. Don't get their sort of contingencies and emergency plans, and do get that. Do get it all. Put it in your BCP. In fact, CQC might not ask for it, but the DSPT toolkit does. Mm-hmm. So when you complete the DSPT, it asks you whether you've got policies and stuff from the software companies you use. Just get them. Put them in a folder, put them in a file, and then set a reminder to review it annually. And just say to them, can I have your most up-to-date policy, please? Can I have your most up-to-date policy, please? You covered yourself that way then. So, And I will say, Radar was very forthcoming with them. Very good. Radar just gave me everything I wanted. I feel like you can pay me after the show. No, I'm
I
joking.
was going to say,
Before we move on, Adam, and then I'll come back to you, just wanted to bring James in while it's relevant, just because he was talking about his procurement process, just in case it helps anybody watching. So they have a procurement process, the boring bit, the 3 quotes, setting a budget, establishing their contract term, appetite, etc. Then they set all their standards against an ethical sourcing checklist, so sustainable products, ethically sourced, preference for UK manufacturers and distributors. They check things like gender pay gap reports, perspectives on corporate social responsibility and charitable giving where possible, whether they are a living wage employer, things like that. Yeah, I think some really good things there. I think the gender pay gap report is quite often missed. And I think in social care, something that we should, well, I think any organisation should be checking, but I definitely think in social care where we're so led by women that actually our organisations are making sure that they're paying women the same amount as they are men, and there is no kind of difference there.
I mean, I'm loving this. Again, my mind's whirring like a million miles an hour, and I'm thinking, oh, I could do all of this now. And I'm going to do all of this, and there's loads that I want to do. There's one thing that I would probably add to that ethical checklist, though. And first question being, are the leaders, the senior management, the board, are they all men? Would be my first question. And then if it was a no, great. Are they all white? Because actually, how are we monitoring our companies that we use for diversity and inclusion? We just have to look at the CQC, and we're inspected under it, workforce diversity and inclusion. And actually, if you look at their board, I think it's something like, I'll make up numbers, but it's something like there's 15 board members, 13 of them are white, and I think only 5 of them are female. And it's like, well, actually, if I have to do this for a supplier, and I'm making sure that they are diverse and inclusive, maybe we should have a procurement process for our regulator. Maybe we should go, actually, no, you don't meet our values. Can't come in. It would never happen. But it's a thought. It's a thought. I'm trying not to say too much so I don't get in trouble next week at the care show.
I think that's a really interesting point, though, about the diversity of boards and leadership teams, because it isn't just about ethnicity or male, female, but it's about diversity of thought as well, and experience and background. And another thing would be, making sure you've got that and those different voices and different representation, and it's not just kind of one very tunnel view of how to do business or how to approach things. So yeah, that's really worth checking out.
I mean, age. I mean, snowy white peaks.
Yeah.
Are they all old white men? Because actually, we need that age diversity. We need the younger generations coming into it.
Yeah.
And I suppose, again, this is another question that we should be asking our software providers, especially when it comes to social care, is what's your experience in care? Is don't come into the sector trying to sell us stuff and actually you've never worked in care before and you're trying to tell us something will work when actually you don't know how a home runs. Yes, we need to learn from other sectors. Yes, we need to learn around how other sectors do things, because we can learn from other sectors tremendously so. But actually, don't create us something which says this is going to fix all your problems, and actually it's just impossible to do, because in the day in life of a care home or a home care agency or a supported living service, just not feasible. So I'd be asking him that as well, most probably. Although I've got to ask another question now, don't I? So, how can organisations effectively identify and mitigate any risks during the procurement process?
It's hard in procurement because you've got your standard ways, and I'm sure James will answer this better than me anyway, in kind of standard ways of dealing with your procurement and the methodologies and things to use, but there's always elements of risk. What we've noticed is you get a procurement that's completed, you're successful, everything's great. And it's that bit in between from procurement to contract signature that needs to sit down and really do the detail work. Like, right, yes, you want to use our system. Now let's really think this through and think what the solution is, because in procurement, it's like doing an exam. So like, we're completing the exam. Yes, we can do that. Great. We've got some points for that. And everything's quite exam orientated with presentation, so on and so forth. And you almost need to kind of remove all that to then sit down and go, right, now, let's talk about stuff. Let's sit in a room and have a more free flowing conversation so we can truly work out what are your implementation challenges, how do we work around it, and come up with a plan to then get a proper risk log to take into the project or the program board. And whether that's done pre-contract or post-contract or during contract negotiations, but that piece of work is super important because that's where the relationship's built, and that's where you start to really know what the rollout's going to look out. Because doing an exam and going, yeah, this company's passed the exam and they've said it'll take them 3 months to roll out, and therefore we're going to roll out by this date. That's kind of hopeful at best, but without the nuance of the, do all of those stakeholders think a 3-month rollout's appropriate? Have we teased out the issues? Have we been and walked around the environment? All of that detail we need to start capturing. So I don't quite know where that sits, but it's not so much procurement. It's identifying risks before you go into project.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what are some of those common risks that you've seen from Radar's point of view? Because obviously you spoke earlier around those 15 people that are involved in that procurement process, but then you've got the operational team that are probably actually going to mobilise it. And then I've got another question for you around procurement before we then move on to mobilisation. But yeah,
so the biggest risks are that everything's lost in translation, because often the people who are mobilising might not have been on the procurement panel and might not have this document that says, oh, this is why we bought this system and what we're hoping to achieve from it. They just get, oh, look, we've bought this, off you go. Can you roll it out? Can you do it in a couple of months? And everyone kind of runs around. So that presents a massive risk because you're not all working to the same kind of project from the start. And I mean supplier as well, because we'll have views, and so stop mitigating that risk up front is probably the biggest thing, that the biggest make or break bit of project is getting that up front and right and understanding that everybody's on the same page. But the second risk that we see quite often is kind of that, like, all right, the procurement's done, we've picked someone, and then everyone's off to the next thing. And actually, really, that's the period of time that needs the most intense work and the scoping up front. Because without the full scoping with all the relevant stakeholders, hopefully it's never all 15 at once, but without that clear plan documenting up front, you just run into problems further and further down the line, and you just kick everything into the long grass. Whereas where we see that really good, right, we've got this product, let's all sit down around the table, let's get documented, let's work out what we're doing, how we're going to measure it jointly, like what are our joint KPIs for success of this project, how are we going to flag risks, how are we going to manage this as we go. By doing that up front, you mitigate so many problems. By not doing that, you just introduce a world of risk into the project.
I want to talk about KPIs in a bit, but before we move on, something that popped into my head is, what advice would you have if a procurement process fails? So I think we're talking in an ideal world, because we're going to move on to mobilisation and rollout and business as usual. But there will be moments when actually you go out to procurement and you don't find a supplier, or the suppliers that bid for you, none of them meet the needs of the business. What would your advice there be?
So twofold. One, I would speak to the suppliers quite outside of, there's the procurement rules and the process that has to be followed. But I'd have quite a genuine, this has failed for these reasons. Quite often it can be quite from a supplier's point of view, it can be a cold end to the transaction, like, no, sorry, we're pulling the procurement or whatever. And you never really know why. I can understand why. And sometimes there might be things that you can resolve that, are unknowns, unless that supplier's totally out for other reasons. But once something ends, it's so harrowing, because everybody loses, everyone's just drained and can't bear the thought of going back through a procurement process, and you can put years onto it from that point. So again, going back to my earlier point, if you can get up front what you're trying to achieve and the problem you're trying to fix, you're much more likely to have a successful procurement, because you're kind of working from that point rather than drilling straight into a list of requirements that you think you may or may not need.
No, thank you.
Have you had procurements go wrong?
I've never had them go wrong. I've definitely had it where we've not had the interest that we thought we might get from a procurement process. And I think you are right. You do need to then reach out to those suppliers, get their feedback. And it might be that you had suppliers that obviously I work for a large organisation and worked for large organisations in the past and local authorities. And quite often you'll have a supplier day. So actually you think that you're going to get more interest than you actually do. And it's about going back to those ones that came on that supplier day and saying, actually, you expressed an interest back then. How come you didn't? But just to see what, maybe you got too high level, or maybe actually they are just off the shelf systems and you want to change it too much to meet the needs of yours, or whatever it is. But I think if you can find out as much information as to why they didn't bid or why that bid hasn't worked, like you said, actually you can then move forward to review it and hopefully push that procurement back out as soon as possible, just like you said, actually, so that people don't lose the will to live with the process.
Yeah, and often companies will run like a bid no bid decision making process. So they'll look at a procurement and there might be things there that you go, oh, we can't do that, so we'll not bid. And that might be something that isn't really a deal breaker for you. Or so there's often that point to make, but also sometimes the way it's the really basic things of double checking that it was on the portal that the supplier was checking, because there's so many of them and we check them and we've got alerts set up all the time and systems that collate them all. But sometimes, things will just appear in different kind of portals. So it is also within the rules of procurement process about letting the suppliers on that day know when it's gone live and where it is to find and that kind of thing.
Adam, any thoughts?
Does this all matter? And can I just go into a shop and go pick something off the shelf and go, oh, that's fine, that'll do?
Which, it's funny you say that, because I was thinking prior to kind of the organisation I'm with now, and I go back to the other local authority company I worked with years ago, actually all the small providers that I've ever worked for wouldn't do this. They would literally just be a case of meeting with suppliers and then implementing one of them. You wouldn't be going through the procurement process. It's only, I think, larger well, I might be wrong, there might be small organisations that do, but I've never worked for any. It normally is just go and buy one.
Yeah. Is off the shelf not better?
Off the shelf is difficult, isn't it? Because off the shelf's never going to be what you want it to be in terms of software. It's really, unless you've got a software where everyone knows what it does up front, like, I don't know, an Apple device where everyone knows what iOS software does and everyone accepts that as it is. But even then, there's stuff that irritates you about it and you wish it could do something different. And so it's accepting that if you're buying off the shelf, it's maybe never going to be quite right. And you really have to think of an organisation as how you're going to make sure the rollout is successful if you're going to put something in that isn't bespoke to you, because 9 times out of 10, it just becomes another bit of software on a shelf that one team's using or one department's using, and it was never quite right and it was never fully integrated. I understand the antitheses of procurement for years and years and that anxiety of choice, and it can go on and you might never get to a point from that point of view. So I think for me, the 2 things I would look for if I was buying a system would be, one, how configurable is the system to meet my business needs? Because having something that someone else's business needs, even, there's not one single care home that works the same. There's not one care group that works the same. No NHS hospital works the same. It just doesn't exist. There's similar themes, but you can't have one operational map for everything. So I'd pick a system that allowed you to configure, but then I'd do my due diligence into how the company would work with you to configure it. And so if it's a smaller group that just goes, I'm just going to sit down and talk to the suppliers, that's what I talk about. Like, how are we going to work out what I need as we go? Can I trust you're going to work with me? Can I trust you've got the resource to fix you and tweak your product? Can I trust that we're going to get training and look at it from that perspective?
2 things there then. So just on the last thing you said, realistically, as part of our procurement process, we should be asking to see their roadmap. Now, The reason I say roadmap is because Radar have a very thorough roadmap over the next couple of years, and I have seen it, and it is brilliant. Very forthcoming with it as well. But it allows me to know where we're going in the future with the products, and I can see what's going to be happening. The second point, what we were talking about, it's gone.
Do you buy in something off the shelf?
Oh, yes, buying it off the shelf. Actually, we buy a product to solve a problem. And then sometimes when we buy our products off the shelves, we then have to instigate our own workarounds because they've got their own problems. So instead of doing a workaround for the original problem, we buy a product which we then need to do a workaround for. And broad as it is long, because you still have an issue. And then you probably start looking for something like, well, can something else do this now? Because this can't do it. And then you end up having 15 products instead of just one. I think Mark's just been joined by Maggie or Ralph.
Definitely not Ralph. Sadly, I don't have that dog anymore. But Maggie, yeah, it is Maggie at the door. So
I'm so sorry. I completely forgot. I feel like do you remember that?
It might be Ralph.
Graham Norton. Oh, have you seen that clip with Graham Norton? He's like, "Have you still got your dog?" And he's like, "No."
It's gone.
Sorry, Mark.
No, you are fine. You are fine.
Back to you. Hi, Maggie.
I'll let her in a minute. So, mobilisation, you mentioned earlier around KPIs. So I know from obviously procurement processes, you'll have your own KPIs that you think that you want the supplier. And then you mentioned about creating those collaboratively. What are the benefits of collaborative KPIs as opposed to maybe the care provider setting them to the supplier?
I think it can be, there's different kinds of KPIs that I think as a care provider, you should be able to kind of say, I want this much uptime, I want my product to work like this, so on and so forth. Those contractual delivery KPIs, that's something that works with. But there's some kind of element of collaboration. So, for example, change requests. Just the realities of being an organisation, like there's 100 people work at Radar as a context. And we have a change request process and we try and refine that and we make that smoother all the time. But if we get bombarded every 10 minutes by, thousands of change requests from a customer, it's really difficult to manage. And so I think there's something about having that transparent conversation where you go, well, look, actually, all these change requests can we order them? Can we work together on them? Because all we're doing is being overwhelmed and we can't do them all at once. And I think having those really honest discussions, likewise with dev roadmaps and product roadmaps, to deliver a product roadmap, you have a dev resource. You've got a dev resource to look after stuff that goes wrong with the system or stuff that might need fixing and tweaks and improvements. But if there's constant requests for change that come every 10 minutes, that can distract from the dev roadmap, and providers can be a bit like, oh, where do we start here? Whereas if you're sitting down together collaboratively, not just as a customer, but as a group of customers to say, these are the things that are most important to us, it helps software companies to work much easier with you and deliver things much quicker rather than just kind of getting this overwhelm of stuff that happens. But if you start to look at KPIs from an ROI point of view, that can't be something, that's got to be something that we can show how the software can deliver, and you guys tell us what you'd want to see. So it has to be collaborative because, for example, if you just did it one-sided, that you came and said, we want this KPI, it might not be something that the software can easily show, or we might end up on this kind of really long-winded workaround way to try and demonstrate it just because you've said you've wanted it, and everyone kind of goes off down all these rabbit holes. And actually, if we just talked and maybe tweaked how the KPI was phrased, because that would make it easier to demonstrate in the system, everyone would be a winner. So it's just about that two-way communication and knowing it's a relationship and it isn't that you just bought a product off the shelf. Because for anything slightly complex or anything around business process, it just doesn't really work.
And just thank you. And just before I bring Adam in on that, somebody over on X, but it hasn't pulled through, has put, do you need KPIs or can it just be good customer service?
It should just be good customer service. And to the NPS point, we use NPS as a measure, but it's a suite of measurements. So we have our own measurements and our own tools that we will publish to you. We check how we're doing all the time. So I can't remember what you were asking me right at the beginning, Adam, about how you find out about a company, but we could share our NPS scores with you and the detail around that.
Just for the uninitiated, NPS, Net Promoter Score?
Yeah, sorry. And it's the thing. So if there's any Radar customers listening, we're like, oh, can you fill this in? Can you fill this in? Can you tell us what you think? Can you tell us what you think? But it is so important because it informs massive change internally. So again, it's that kind of slightly collaborative piece. We still need you to feed to us what the customer service is and how it's doing it. But I accept if there's good customer service, if we're making sure the product does what you wanted it to do at point of purchase, maybe you don't need KPIs.
Yeah, I feel like we could do a whole show on the NPS. So James has just come in saying NPS. No, N for November, P for Papa, S for Santa Claus. I don't know. I'm not very good at it. But the Net Promoter Score, and it's brutal as well because it's like 1 to 10, and only 9 to 10 count. Anything less than 8, anything less than 9, it's just like, well, no one cares, or they think you're really, really bad. And it shows how people are disengaged. It's a great tool, really, really great tool. You have to buy like licenses and stuff from what I know, unless you've got your own way of calculating it yourselves. But the Net Promoter Score is a really cool way to assess how. So it's like, would you recommend us? And if everyone put a 7, then naturally no one's really going to recommend you because they're not invested in it. I love the Net Promoter Score. I used to do it in my old care home. We went through a phase of actually all of our surveys for our residents in our team were done on a Net Promoter Score. and we were pulling in some really interesting data through that. So yeah, I love it. Just to touch on that around should it be good customer service or KPIs, I still think there needs to be KPIs, because me as a customer, I want to be able to say, I want to reduce how long, and I'm going to use Radar again because why not? You're here. I want to be able to reduce down the time that I'm doing my auditing, because currently it's taking me 10 hours a week, and I can't waste that time. I want to be able to reduce that down. Show me how I can do that and what sort of time I'm going to be looking at, because then we've got that idea. Well, actually, you're going to achieve that, and you're going to be able to. We need something to be able to say it's going to fix it from our side of views, from when we're buying stuff and taking stuff from you, not potentially yourselves, but for us as customers, we need to have those thresholds in our head of actually what is it happening now, and what needs to happen moving forwards, because then how am I to evaluate that to see how well it's working for me? Because if I've not got a measurable, I can't do anything to say, oh yeah, it's working perfectly, because if we're not measuring it, probably not even doing it right, and it just becomes, like you say, another software that gets lost and we forget to cancel our contract next time the contract comes around, and we're locked in for another 3 years, and then we'll promise ourselves in 3 years' time we'll cancel it, and 3 years comes around and we've forgotten again. We've got to be invested in it from both sides, with customer and provider. We've got to have that equal sort of input, haven't we?
I think from our point of view as well as a provider, we've no interest in contracts that just auto renew, and because what we want is to be able to go, every single one of our customers gets the value they wanted from the system, and it's been demonstrated in these ways, and that check and balance is in place, because that's how we would assess that you're happy. We look at things like that. We look at things to make sure we have kind of what we would call customer success flags. So we'd have flags where we'd say, well, you know, these are the things we know makes a happy customer, and if this isn't there, that's something we need to look at. And one of the biggest flags is making sure you're getting that value that you wanted from the system, because otherwise it just becomes vaporware then, and it may as well have been off the shelf.
Mark's on mute.
Well, I was saying I'm very conscious of time, and then I've wasted time by being on mute. But
30 seconds.
Any final tips on mobilisation before we move on to that ongoing customer service?
So my tip, it probably goes through procurement and everything, but throughout all of this, think about the time resource you guys need to put in, because there is no product, in my opinion, that you can just plug and play without any kind of time at your side. And so, you know, that is an investment, and it's to build that investment in and think about that upfront. You know, what's it going to take of your resource, of your time, of, you know, getting that solution right. If you got the kind of 2 or 3 days that you might need to think about it all upfront. And again, in doing that and having that adequate time on both sides, you're able to move forward much quicker and much easier. But one of the biggest frustrations from kind of a supplier point of view, at point of mobilisation, is not being able to get the time with people, because everyone's so busy and you feel like you're always chipping around. Can we just get that meeting? Can we just get half an hour? And whereas if you're really clear up front, this is the time we've both got to co-invest to make this work, it works much quicker, and then it's not, you know, it's all done up front rather than dragging out over the life of the contract.
That's great. Adam, any tips from you? And you're on mute before you reply.
That was, I couldn't see my cursor on the screen. It was doing one of those things, you know, where the cursor disappears. No tips from me. I think we can crack on. But I'm making so many notes from tonight's show. I'm going to go in tomorrow with like this whole new mindset of procurement.
Okay, so ongoing relationship, post mobilisation. We've got the system, it's in place. We've spoken about open communication. We've spoken about regular contact. How regular should that contact be in those early days? And then obviously, presumably it would wean off, but never drop off throughout the length of the contract.
So we have different kind of cadences around that, but our biggest concern will be a customer that we're not getting to speak to in any which way, because, you know, no matter how busy, normally you can find that time. I agree with the weaning type approach, and having regular check-ins is super important, not just as part of once you like in kind of live with the product, but right from the very beginning. So one of the kind of softer methodologies we roll out is the project will run, but then we'll put a check-in, an informal check-in with the original buyer and someone else just once a week to go, is everything all right? Is it ticking? Is there, you know, right? Have we got any issues? Have they got any issues? And to ward anything off before it comes in. And I know, Adam, you were saying at the beginning, you kind of have that anyway with Mark, where you guys just check in once a week, everything all right? And just having that moment for a couple of, even if it's a couple of minutes and that's all needed, you've got that time to force yourself to remember to check in rather than letting issues rumble and build. Like any kind of relationship, have a date night, make sure you've got it there, make sure you've got the opportunity to talk, and any good supplier should be putting those in. And it can be as formal or as informal as you need, but you know, ideally it's a proper review of your account and everything's documented. But if you don't have time, at least a 5-minute check-in.
So just for everyone listening, she doesn't mean Mark and I here. My project manager.
Sorry.
My project manager at Radar, and we've been using Radar for almost 12 months now. We've been involved with Radar, and every single week I have my project managers meeting with my project manager, and it's great. Sometimes they last 15 minutes, sometimes they last an hour, sometimes they last 2 hours. But I know that every single week I'm going to get to meet my project manager and go, this isn't really working at the minute. Can we try and fix it? Or actually, I've got nothing going on this week, but I could just do you sorting these things in the background for me. Or even going, actually, we've had a few issues. Can we get a few more people involved? And we've had that in the past. And I'm going to be honest with that. We've had that in the past with Radar. And, Rhiannon and the team were like, oh, my God, how do we fix this? What do we do? Let's listen to you and let's figure out what you need and how we get around this. And it's been brilliant. I don't have to worry now thinking, oh, my God, I don't know what I'm going to do with Radar because I just don't know how I'm going to address it, or I don't know who to talk to. I don't know anyone's name. I know, and it's been a consistent project manager. So my project manager has been the same person since day one. So I'm already thinking as a customer, well, really great retention, because sometimes you just get these people disappearing left, right, and center. And actually, they care about the customer as well, because I'm seeing them every single week, and it's the same person every single week. And when they're on leave, it's the person that works with them, and they've been with me since day one as well. So I'm not met with 1,000 different faces. We've been able to have that long-term ongoing relationship to the point now where Mark and I can be like, oh, God, what's going on this week? And I was like, oh, do you know what? I've got this going on. We really saw a great working partnership. Honestly, I feel like the show should be sponsored by Radar tonight, but I'm
run it.
No, I mean, I'm not trying to push that. I'm being genuine about my experience with the system, because we've had ups, we've had downs, we've had times where the system's not worked where we've needed it to, but at every single point along the way, it's always been right. How do you need it to work? How do you need it to support you? How do you need it to sort of showcase this? And that's why we're sticking with it, because actually, out of all the softwares we use, this is probably the most it's the strongest relationship we've got with a software provider, and that has meant the world to me moving forward. When I did my scoping exercise, I contacted quite a few quality providers, and some of them just didn't get back to me, or got back to me in 2 weeks' time. And I'm like, well, I kind of want to get this sorted. And if you're not that bothered because you just think, well, anyone's going to come over and your systems cost a lot of money anyway, so what's the loss of one sale? Whereas Radar from day one, on it with me, supported with me, answering all, let me have a trial, let me have a play around, let me have a look at things. That was really important to me. So our relationship from day one has just gone from strength to strength to strength. It was like a really good first date. We're coming up to our sort of first year anniversary now, and I'm like, right, do I get flowers? Do I get no Secco? I don't know. Barry White on the radio. I don't know what to do. It's been a really good year.
If Mark's listening, I hope he's making notes. Non-Secco, Barry White, then it was flower. Write a note saying you've appreciated the last year.
With that though, and I know I've just set everyone a really sort of high bar now of customer relations. So if you are a provider and you're listening to this, look at Radar for a really good model. How often should we be reviewing the performance? And what should we focus on these reviews to ensure that A, it's working, and B, we're sort of supporting continual improvement?
Well, funny you should say that. We've just designed a new account review document that kind of gives the elements we think you should look at, because there's the success around support, number of tickets you've got out, if you're waiting on stuff from a support point of view, how that's happening. From product, are you waiting on roadmap items? I know you've got a couple, Adam, that you're waiting on. I know that there might be things that are coming in the future. How's that going? your usage of the product. So we've got this kind of blueprint of what a total successful usage of Radar might be, and we would talk to you about your usage against that to see how you're tracking, if everything's working as it should. Use stakeholders, so we should be in that review asking, have people moved roles? You guys move loads, job roles change, things change. Again, Mark, I should have answered when you asked about risks in projects. It's the movement of stakeholders is quite a big one as well. So we should be documenting that. Daft stuff like checking your emails are still right and we've got the right emails and you're getting all our kind of comms out, because we've had to do a big piece of work on that before to make sure we've got the right comms going out. Generally, how are you tracking against KPIs? What are your thoughts for the future? What are the strategic aims of your organisation? So what's your organisation going to be doing next? And what do you need from us to make that happen? Because loads of time we'll get, we've bought 3 or 4 more care homes. How do we best bring this in? Or we're working from this kind of point of view, or we're going to move this service here. So we can consult and advise on all that. But then we've also got a checklist where we will go like, this is kind of the things we check on your usage in the system. Have you got all these bits turned on? Have you got all the roles right? Have you got loads of, in our instance, outstanding incidents or workflows that need completing, or like a real health check, a bit like a credit report, kind of this is how well we think your system's functioning for your quality, safety and risk point of view. So something like that, ideally every 6 months, realistically at least once a year, to get that total view, and we don't want to be taking people's time, because we know we're one software provider out of lots, that this isn't people's day jobs talking to software providers and doing account reviews, but doing one meeting like that well in a period of time, just make sure that success is always throughout the lifespan of the product.
I love that piece of advice, because I think there's so many of us that will use systems that might not use all of the system, or there might be elements actually with upgrades that we don't even know are there. So actually that health check and that you haven't got this bit switched on, is that right? Do you need it switched on? Do you understand it? Actually really valuable. My last question before we part ways for this evening is around, we've touched on it, but I think there'll be a lot of suppliers, or a lot of providers, with suppliers that might not meet the needs of the business, or they've got a system and they think, oh, I wish I did it that, or their operational teams will definitely think, oh, I wish I did that, or I wish that worked like that. And we've spoken about roadmaps. How important is the feedback from a supplier point of view from providers around ideas, that future innovation, and how do you gather that feedback? And basically, how would you recommend providers give that to their suppliers?
So we've got different ways that we get that feedback at the minute. So I'll start with the transactional way, which is useful, where we have a community and you can put your ideas onto a community. All the other users can see it and they can vote if they like it, and it kind of gets bumped up in the list. That's really useful for transactional. If we could just change this to that, or that button to that, this is a cool idea. And I think we've delivered something like 200 elements from that. Sorry, sounds like I'm doing a sales pitch, but just to give you the concept of how much we use it, over the last year or so, there's been 200 of those ideas we've delivered in our roadmap, because it's really important to listen to that. But there are downsides to that approach, because it's difficult to get across nuance, and it's difficult to really tease out sometimes what people mean or what customers mean. And so we have different forums then. So our chief product officer will run round tables about different elements. So that we've got some happening at the minute for our next phase of tech stack around the things that we'd like to see once we're using a different tech thing. And so we would invite people to that, but we try and do it from a stakeholder point of view, because otherwise, if you've got someone that's a home manager who needs one thing versus someone on a board that wants something else, or a system administrator that wants something else, those meetings can just get lots of kind of conflicting things. So we try and structure it from that point of view and feed things in that way. We also, for anything that we are going to roll out that's new, we do a beta group. So we'll ask people to be part of that group. They'll be there, they'll get early releases of it, they'll get to test it, they'll get to view it, they'll get to be part of the iterations as it goes through our product methodology internally. And that's super important, because nothing goes out from our product that hasn't gone through that beta process and hasn't had that final user acceptance testing, because you need like Mark, our chief product officer, is such a good innovator, and he's got so many cool ideas. And you need that role, and you need something external almost to the market to have those brilliant ideas. But then you need to build them in conjunction with customers to make sure they're fit for purpose. And if you don't do that, it falls down. And you've either got really cool tech ideas that are never ever practical, or you've got really, really practical ideas that never move the needle from a tech perspective. So you need both together.
No, thank you very much. And I guess that brings us full cycle to what you were saying, Adam, earlier around actually in those early research days, actually what background do they have on social care? Are they just a tech company that's coming into the space? Or do they have a handle on actually what the challenges are and what their future roadmap looks like? Adam, any thoughts from you before I let you close out the show?
I say this every single week, but I've learned loads tonight. And I'd say I've learned loads. Every day's a learning day. I know there's a bumper sticker or, it's a very twee sort of thing to say, but every day is a learning day. But actually, I've not just learned something on tonight's show. I've actually started to change the way I think around doing certain things as well. So I'm actually thinking to myself, actually, we could do this better. We could do that better. We could actually, before we even start moaning about our software, actually, we could improve our procurement process. I could change the way that I look at every day is a learning day. There we go. More slogans and similar will be available on t-shirts soon. There are no stupid questions. The only stupid thing is not asking a question. Full of them here, full of them. I'm like one of them sort of fortune crackers, which are sort of crack open. But I've actually changed the way just tonight, thinking, well, actually, we could do this better. We could do this differently. And it's just stuff I've never thought about before. And I think if I'm thinking like that, then there's going to be loads of people out there thinking like that and thinking, well, actually, we just need to change the way we do things. I'm wondering, Mark, whether we can get something put together very, very soon and out to providers before the care show so that they can go around the care show with these sort of procurement questionnaires and go, right, I'm going to fill this in when I go around. Someone's going to try and sell me a software or someone's going to try and sell me this. Perfect. What's your gender pay gap?
Do it.
I think we should, because actually the sales team need to know this information. Rianne's going to literally jump off this call and phone Justine and go, Justine, oh my God, make sure that everybody knows our gender pay gap at the care show.
Care show, just come up to the radar stand just for kicks and ask them. We'll do a little tally of how many people, yeah.
There you go. Go and find Radar and ask them the gender pay gap at the care show. Obviously talk to them about the product, but just go and ask them the gender pay gap at the care show. But actually, go into the trade shows fully armed, not just to get the freebies, but fully thinking in your head, right, well, if I'm going to talk to somebody about a software provider or a software company or a tool or something like that, am I armed with the correct questions? Am I going to this event with the right stuff that I need to know or that they need to give me the answers to? We will be on this. I'm going to try and make sure that we've got something ready for the care show next week because I think it'll be a really interesting exercise. I'm going to take some myself and go through the questionnaires myself. So, yes. And finally, just a huge thank you, Rianne, for joining us. I know it's Bake Off night. I have got it on record. I will be watching it after this.
I'm just saying I missed my yoga class for this. So that's how important you are to me, Adam.
Oh, thank you, Rianne. Honestly, I would miss yoga for you too.
I
don't do yoga. I've never done yoga in my life, so I'll gladly miss a yoga class. Downward dog and all of that sort of stuff. Like my nickname when I used to go out in the early days of my teenage years. No, thank you, Rianne, for joining us. Thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for being open and honest as well, especially in the lines of Radar. I just want to say a huge thank you. I'm sure Mark will echo the same. A huge thank you. Oh, cut him off.
No, I was just going to say thank you very much.
A huge thank you to everyone who's joined us tonight, who watches us on Catch Up. James, we would love to know more about your policy and know more about that. We'll also have a look at putting together something in which you can do your Net Promoter Scores yourself as well, because James has said it's very easy to do. I've just done a quick sort of ChatGPT thing, and actually it's given me a really good way of how to do that. So we'll try and get that resource out to you, and potentially you could start doing your own Net Promoter Scores. And yes, we will have a look at getting some sort of toolkits or questionnaires out there ready for your procurement process very soon. No show next week. PSA, no show next week because you're all going to come and watch us live at the Care Show. So don't miss us on Tuesday. Join us Wednesday, Thursday at the Care Show. We will be there. We will be back the following week. Can't tell you what it's about. Not that it's a secret. I just don't know. but it'll be something awesome. It'll be something good. Live as usual at 7:30, and that is not next Tuesday. It is whatever the Tuesday afterwards is. I can't get my calendar up. Of October.
Of October. Yeah,
that is crazy. That means I've only got like 2 weeks after that show till I put my Christmas trees up.
Yeah, the year's going very quick. We'll be in 2025 before we know it.
Stop it. Come on, we've got Halloween first.
I know, I'm dead excited. I've got the kids for Halloween this year as well. Not my kids, my sister's kids. But they want to come and stay with Cool Uncle to do their sort of Halloween trick-or-treating and stuff. I've got a cauldron at the minute underneath my fireplace, which bubbles and like smoke and steam come out. It's so cool. I love it. Right, I'm going to have to stop the show because otherwise people are going to listen to us waffle. You're more than welcome, Victoria. You're more than welcome every single week. Any comments that we have, we do feed through and we sort of build our new shows on moving forwards. But until then, thank you to our sponsors. They have been running across the bottom of the screen throughout the duration of the show. We have Prosperwell, we have CBAT Care Business Associates Training, we have Attis Care by Attis Insurance Brokers, we have Log My Care, and we have Florence. Do go check out all of our sponsors. www.thecareinview.co.uk gives you access to absolutely everything that we do. So until then, we will see you in person at the Care Show. Come and say hello. And if you're not there, we will see you a week on Tuesday. Good night and take care.
Good night.